So, after checking up on a couple of friends that I haven't talked to since like high school, I actually got an idea for this week's episode. So, I believe I'm going to start with that topic. And then after that topic, if I don't spend too much time on it, I will then I'll just wing it like I always do. So, with that, welcome everybody to this week's episode of Divergence and Divine. My name is WIllspiration, and today I'm going to talk about rejection sensitive dysphoria, or RSD for short. Now, RSD is something that I struggle with, and it's actually something that a lot of people that on the spectrum and that have like ADD or ADHD also struggle with. Also, people with anxiety might struggle with this as well, especially if they have like self-confidence issues or self-esteem issues. But there's also another thing that I want to cover along with RSD as well, which is also known as limerence. So actually, I kind of feel like RSD actually, at least in my opinion, at least for me, the way RSD and limerence works is that typically RSD will breed limerence, and then limerence will then breed RSD. So it's kind of like a vicious cycle almost. So let me explain how this works. So rejection sensitive dysphoria, obviously, is, to put it simply in layman's terms, rejection hurts like a motherfucker. And it hurts bad. And most people obviously don't like being rejected, right? We have a crush on somebody, we like them, and then we go and we tell them, oh, hey, I like you. And they go, yeah, but I don't like you like that. Like, we're just friends. And then next thing you know, all of a sudden, the friendship is just awkward forever, right? Like, nothing is the same. You'll never have that same level of friendship status that you had, because that person is just like, oh, it was good until, this person told me they were interested in me, and now it just feels awkward. And I think for a lot of us with RSD, that is like the most, like, that's basically like saying, ew, you're gross, get away from me, right? So for us, in our brains, that automatically just goes, oh, this person hates me, they don't want anything to do with me. And then this is where limerence kind of comes into play, because after a while of being rejected and, feeling sorry for yourself and beating yourself up for being you, anytime that you're interested in someone, regardless of your sexual orientation, you will develop feelings for them. And I say regardless of sexual orientation because I know there are people that are gay, lesbian, I know there are people that are trans, etc. So regardless of gender or orientation, whatever your preference is, you will be attracted to anybody that, fits your orientation and, gender preference if they show you any amount of kindness. I know for me, I've had that before where I've kind of gotten screwed over for just being myself, that anytime any woman shows me any sort of kindness, I mistake it as interest. Like, oh, she probably likes me because she's being so nice to me. And, that means that, she's got to be interested in me, right? But the thing is that that's not necessarily the case, because just because a woman shows kindness to you, she's being friendly. It doesn't necessarily mean that she's interested in you. Now, obviously, if you can study the signs of flirting, or you just kind of are able to tell naturally, which is kind of hard to do when you're autistic and when you're ADHD, more so like with autism, because like obviously you already struggle enough as it is with understanding, subtle body language and social cues and stuff. So, and then with ADHD, it's more so because your brain isn't really focused on everything at all times, and it's basically your brain just wants to just immediately latch onto someone that gives you affection. Like, you're like, oh, this person, must care about me a lot. And, and then you like try to make friends with them, and then you do become friends with them. And then all of a sudden you have interest in them, but to them, they don't even know that you're limerent for them. They don't even know what limerence is. and they just think that you're just a really good, nice, caring person, and that, you're a friend, but they don't see that hidden interest because it's like, not apparent. Now, as limerence gets worse, it becomes like, you're going to want to start, trying to hang out with them all the time. You're going to want to start, being as supportive as possible, you're almost, your brain is like trying to be a partner. Like you want to, shower them with all this affection and love that they don't have for you. Most of the time when you fall limerent for somebody, they don't even really want anything to do with you in the first place. They're just kind of like, oh, you're just an acquaintance. Like you're not even a friend. Like you're like, you're a semi-friend. Like you're somebody that I'll talk to when all my friends are busy, but I won't really bother with you too much, when my friends aren't busy. Like that's where most people typically tend to sit when they show you that kindness. Now, every once in a while, you might actually make a friend. And I've read online, many people that have, been lucky enough that their limerent crush actually ended up becoming someone that they did, that they did date. I've read stories where it's worked out and that person is happily married to their, limerent crush, and that, they have a family or they're starting a family together. And then there's other stories where, it didn't work out and they're like, wow, I feel really stupid for having been limerent and having a crush on this person because they were not at all what I thought. And that's just the very common reality of it, is that you never know that just because you have somebody that you're interested in because you're that you're limerent for them doesn't necessarily mean that they are interested in you, nor does it mean that you're interested in them. Really, what's happening is you're trying to fill a gap in your life that you don't have, whether it's because, you didn't have a good childhood, or maybe you're not close with your family in general. Like, for me, it was like my parents didn't understand me being autistic because I've said this before, but I wasn't diagnosed until I was 27. So they didn't even know that I was autistic. I didn't even know I was autistic, right? I mean, I knew I was ADHD because the first time I went to go get tested for ADHD and autism, I was just diagnosed with ADHD. So I knew I was ADHD at 25, but I didn't know that I was autistic as well. And it explains so much because I could share so many stories of like times where I've literally let my autism breed limerence and then let that breed rejection, sensitive dysphoria, and then have that become a vicious cycle of RSD and limerence. And it's taken a lot of work in therapy, in fact, like 6 years of therapy, in fact, to finally kind of start breaking that cycle of just because, somebody that I find attractive, that's, a decent person or even a kind person shows me, kindness and friendliness and affection, does not mean that that person is interested in me, because I don't even know if that person has a partner. I could be interested in a woman and think she's the most gorgeous woman in the world and have a crush on her, and yet she's probably, in a happy relationship. Or maybe she's happily married and she just, forgot to put on her ring this morning, and really she's married. She just didn't put her ring on because she was in a rush to leave the house, after getting ready. But that's why you have to really kind of just feel out your own emotions. Like, are you attracted to this person because they showed you an ounce of kindness that maybe you don't get in your personal life, that somebody finally gave you, and you're just like, oh my God, I needed this so bad. Like, oh, I love this person, they're amazing. Or do you actually genuinely, have interest in them, and you're just like, I kind of actually do like them. And that's like the hardest distinction, is trying to find whether you actually like somebody because you genuinely have interest in them, or if it's your limerence taking over because you've been screwed over time and time again by, this being in the dating scene in general, you've just been screwed over so many times, or if maybe you just have a lot of issues in your personal life as it is, or even both. And you're looking for someone to finally fill that hole and fill that void where you can be like, I love you. You're my pillar of strength. You're the person that I need to keep myself going, and actually have that person genuinely feel the same way about you. Now, the thing about rejection sensitive dysphoria is that, at least in my opinion, the levels of severity, varies. I mean, I feel like some people can have RSD very mildly, where, yeah, they're heartbroken for like a week after being rejected by their crush, after saying, hey, I like you, you want to go out sometime. And then there are people that have RSD so bad, like to severe cases where they would be willing to unalive themselves from their crush rejecting them, which, by the way, ending your own life is never the answer. And I know that's a lot, harder. Like, it's easier said than done. But if you ever feel like that your, RSD is that bad and you just got rejected, call the crisis hotline, or call a family member or a friend or somebody close to you that you can trust, because I promise you it is not worth doing that to yourself and putting others through that. And for me, I would say my rejection sensitive dysphoria, is somewhere between mild and moderate. Again, that's something that I've worked on in therapy for years, because I was always self-conscious about being autistic and ADHD, even though I didn't know it at that time. And the way that I was treated, both at school and at home and in general, is like, oh, well, I'm not normal. I'm different. People think that I'm weird. And then again, at 27, I finally get my autism diagnosis, and it's like, oh, okay, well, I'm an autistic ADHDer. Like, there is literally nothing wrong with me. My brain is just wired different. I'm just, I see things more logically, and my sense of humor is a little more dry, and, my sarcasm isn't the greatest, but when I do land a sarcastic joke, people die of laughter, so that's good. But I think it's just more so the way that, things play out in life, I feel like also can determine how bad your RSD can develop. At least that's my personal take. Again, I'm no like psychiatrist. I'm not somebody, with a doctorate's degree in mental health, but like, I just feel like that to me is how it would work. I sometimes when it comes to these things, I think very logically, like, it would just be, that would just be the most logical outcome, right? But in reality, there's probably many, many more factors to this. But this is just like, at least what I've noticed within myself. And it might be, and of course, it might be and probably is different in everybody else. Like the things that trigger it are probably, everyone has different triggers, right? But going back to it, I think for me, learning that was like a huge help, because now it's like when I do meet a woman within my age, like age range, I'm not initially like, oh, she's friendly. I like her. She's pretty. I want to date her. Now it's like, oh, this person's really nice. I'm gonna kind of feel them out, get to see how they are. And you know what? If I just end up being friends with a woman, that's great. If at some point, she develops romantic feelings and I develop romantic feelings, I'm okay with, giving her a shot and dating her too. Like, that's kind of just how dating works, You can't just rush into a relationship and be like, oh, I love you, let's date, I want to spend my life with you, because you still don't know that person. Like, you gotta get to know that person. You gotta go through those steps of getting acquainted with someone, and then kind of slowly making that effort to start talking to them more, and then kind of getting to know them more. And then, once you build that foundation of trust and you guys start a friendship, now you guys can kind of start talking and, leaning on each other. Like, when you need somebody and like all your other friends are busy and, that person is available, and you need that support right then and there, and you do that, then it's great. And then from there, you find a meaningful friendship that if it were to blossom into a relationship, you'd be happy with it, but you're also just happy being really good friends with that person. And then it puts you in that state of mind where it's like you're content with everything. But if something were to change inside of you where you would be like, you know what, the more I think about it, the more I really like this person. Like maybe it's time I, get the courage to say, hey, I've been thinking about my feelings, towards you. And I've always thought they were platonic, but I'm kind of realizing that, maybe I am interested in you romantically. And I know it's very awkward for me to bring that up, and I totally understand and respect if you don't feel the same way. But as your friend, I thought, to be completely transparent with you and to be communicative, I would let you know that I do kind of have a little bit of a crush on you right now. And, just if you don't feel the same way, that's fine. It'll go away. I'll kind of give you some space and give myself some space, kind of let the feelings die down and everything will go back to normal. But, that's just kind of where things are right now in my head anyway. Rather than just kind of saying, I really like you. I think we should, go out on a date sometime. Because then it's a little more jarring and it's a little more like just way too out there. At least doing the other approach, you're kind of like acknowledging the fact that it's going to be awkward and that you're okay with it being awkward for a little bit. You're okay that if that person needs a couple weeks away from you, it's good for them and it's good for you, because then you can really reassess your feelings about that person and be like, well, maybe I jumped the gun. Maybe we just had a really good friend moment and I kind of misinterpreted that as interest, because then you kind of like, you can kind of work on it. And if you have a therapist, it's even better, because then you can take it to your therapy session and be like, hey, I told this person that I like them. We're really good friends. I don't know where it's at. I feel kind of embarrassed because I feel like, I shouldn't have made that decision. And then you can work on it in therapy. And, after a couple weeks, it's like you guys can hang out, and it might be awkward at first when you talk and hang out. But once that person kind of sees that your feelings, your romantic feelings for them are no longer there, and that things feel like how they did before you uttered those words, then you know that things are back to normal. And now you know that, hey, I have a good friend, somebody that I can rely on, and that's great. But I think it's better to just be open about your feelings with somebody, because really and truly, if that person were to just flat out reject you after you tell them that you like them, and it makes things awkward and they start ghosting you, they start avoiding you when you're talking to them, and in person, they look very uncomfortable, and they feel very awkward around you, then that person wasn't truly your friend, right? That person probably saw something in you that they needed filled in their life that only you could provide. Like, for example, me. I'm a very kind and caring person. I love helping people. I will listen to anybody's problems, give them my take on it, and use my logical thinking brain to be like, in a logical sense, this is how I see it. In a more personal and emotional lens, this is how I see it. And give them my take on the logical side and the emotional and mental side of it, and be like, do with that information what you will, but I hope that it helps you. I mean, I even hope that just letting you vent to me will help, any way possible. And then, for a lot of people, it's just like, they would see that and be like, oh, I can go to this person and vent to them at any time. They've been there for me. But at the same time, then it also depends on if that person will be there for me when I need them. Because if they're not, it really kind of starts calling into question, were they my friend? Or did they just, become my friend after a while because they were leaning on me for support? But now that, I might need that shoulder to lean on, all of a sudden they just kind of feel like, oh, this isn't what I signed up for. You're supposed to be helping me, not the other way around. Then, yeah, I'll start, raising an eyebrow and being like, that's weird. Like, I'm going to keep my guard up because I feel like this isn't going to go anywhere good, at least. So usually when that happens, I'll kind of start feeling that person out. I'll give them space for a couple days, I won't text them. I won't, interact with them. I'll kind of just be like, okay, let me feel them out. Let me see if they were, just busy or if they were going through something. Maybe they were busy and they didn't have time to send me a text or something. And they just, forgot, especially like when you're neurodivergent and you have like ADHD or you have like autism and you're just having a really rough day. And like the last thing on your mind is to like text anybody at all, especially when you're a parent. I'm not a parent, but I do have a couple, I have plenty of friends that are parents, and, responding to texts or returning someone's call is not the first thing on their mind, especially if they're neurodivergent, because then you're already trying to take care of yourself and your kids. And, if you're in a relationship or you're married, you also have your spouse as well, or significant other. So like in your mind, you're not really initially thinking about it. You might see the text and be like, oh, I'll reply to them later. And then you don't, which is okay. But, as someone with, rejection sensitive dysphoria, to me, that immediately starts triggering those starting stages of going through an RSD episode, because now it's like, did I say something wrong? Was I a little too open about what I was going through? Did they just not know how to respond? Like, what's the vibe here? What's happening? And my rule of thumb is I always say, wait 24 hours, send a text, and then if I don't hear from them, now I'm going to give them 2 days. Now I'm going to give them 48 hours, kind of shoot another text. If I don't get a response from them, then I'm going to wait 72 hours. I'm going to give them 3 days. If I don't hear back from them again, then we just jump straight to 7 days. Now I'm going to give them a full week. And then I'll send them another text, see how they're doing, check up on them, see how things are going. If I still don't hear from them again, I'll give them another week. And usually after giving them about a total of 3 weeks, then I just kind of know, okay, at this point, it's done. Like, this person clearly either, was turned off because I was a little too open about something, or I just upset them and they just want nothing to do with me anymore. But at least I know that I made an attempt. I gave them plenty of space, giving them, sending them a text here and there just to see how they're doing. Didn't respond, And if they respond after a month and they go, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, life was just hell for like the last month. Things were falling apart. I was trying to, keep everything together. I wasn't trying to ignore you or anything. I was just too busy trying to keep myself, from breaking down. And I just didn't know if I should say something. And, sometimes people are prideful and they don't want to like say anything when they're struggling. They just want to, put on that face and be like, no, everything is fine. And meanwhile, in life, things are falling apart. And that's okay, because you know what? Sometimes you do kind of need to like keep what's happening, in your life private from other people sometimes. But at the same time, it also doesn't hurt to actually be, transparent and be like, hey, life is just really shitty right now. I got a whole bunch of stuff on my plate. I'm really stressed out, and, I'm trying to take care of my family. I'm trying to take care of my kids, and, I just got a lot of shit going on, and I just, I can't really deal with anything right now. And I hope you understand that, like, if I'm not responding to texts, it's not because I'm ignoring you or because you made me mad. It's because literally I am struggling, and I'm really sorry, but, I just kind of have to take care of all this stuff first. And it makes sense, because then at least you know what's happening. But at the same time, not every person is going to be that transparent and that communicative with you. They're just going to literally be in survival mode, right? And that's totally fine. And it makes sense. But also, you have to accept the reality too that person could also be lying to you. because they still want to keep you around for their benefit, even though you don't really get anything, in return. Because if you want my honest opinion, the things that make relationships so like important is the fact that, with friends and family and significant others and spouses, regardless of the kind of relationship that you have, it's always give and take. Like, if I help you out and I ever need help, I would expect that, you're going to be someone that I can trust to lean on, because not everyone is available at all times. I might have a specific friend that I like to confide in, and that person might be busy. So I always like to, kind of see, if that person will be there for me when I need them. Because if they can't, then I know, like, okay, this is kind of suspicious. Let me see if they're busy and they just have a lot of stuff going on. And then if that kind of just starts escalating to damn near a month, then I know, okay, yeah, this person was just really using me as like a therapist rather than actually genuinely being my friend. And then, that's kind of where you have to like kind of cut that person off. It's okay if you want to talk to them still, you just kind of bump them down from friend to acquaintance. And if you feel like they are trying to use you as a therapist, you can be like, ooh, sorry. I know, I usually help you out, but I'm actually kind of busy today. I got a whole bunch of errands to run, and then I got to go, visit my family. And, I can't really help you today, but if you still need someone to talk to tomorrow, I'll be available. Because then you don't sound like a jerk, but then you also kind of start showing them that something is up, and that if they're really taking advantage of you, you're aware of it now. And you can kind of see what happens from there. If they start ignoring you after you send that, even after you check up on them to see if they're okay, then you kind of know, okay, yeah, they were just using me and they really didn't they didn't even care about me. So I think that's kind of like the biggest issue, is just like not falling limerent for somebody that gives you affection and like even shows a remote ounce of interest in you. Like, you always got to make sure you take that with a grain of salt, because when you have RSD and RSD breeds limerence, you always know that you're literally one step away from falling into a hole known as limerence, and you're going to have to basically claw your way out of that hole by yourself. And if you have a therapist, it helps, because then they can be on the other side of that hole and they can throw you a rope and then you can climb out of that hole in therapy. But you always have to be aware that RSD can breed limerence, and that limerence can breed RSD, and that it's a vicious cycle, and that, you have to learn how to break that cycle and learn that not everybody is going to, feel the same about you and, the way that you feel about them. And it's kind of ultimately, it comes down to how you handle yourself and how you conduct yourself and how well you take care of yourself. Because the biggest thing is you got to learn to love yourself first. You got to learn to love all of your flaws, all the, good things about you, all the bad things about you, anything that is, not part of you that maybe you've developed as habits. Like, learn how to unlearn those habits, if that makes sense. But basically anything that is a habit that you learn, whether it be for, as a defense mechanism for your emotions and your mental stability, or being selfish because you don't trust people's, affection that they give towards you or the interest that they show in you, that kind of stuff, learning how to undo that so you can be more open. And if you're like someone like me who, is always open and always puts out their story for everyone to know, when to pull back and only release certain things about certain stories of your life, so that people aren't just be like, oh yeah, that dude's autistic and he's ADHD and, he's got this thing called limerence, and, he might have a crush on you and you don't even know it. So you might want to stay away from him. Now it's just like, oh, okay, well, this person struggles with autism and The fact that, we don't know how is makes me wonder, but I mean, he seems normal. I mean, that's good, right? It basically just makes it so that people don't really question you. Um, but really, as far as rejection sensitive dysphoria goes, like it's just something that you have to work on in therapy. It's something that, you might struggle with the rest of your life. Actually, I'm pretty sure it's something that you'll probably struggle with the rest of your life. But just knowing what your triggers are and knowing that it's okay if somebody doesn't like you, because at the end of the day, you have to love yourself before you can love somebody else. And just also being aware that if you're a very kind, understanding, and caring person like myself, people are going to take advantage of you because you love to help and you like giving advice. So you have to learn when to give that advice and give that help. Because it's easy to be like, oh, I love helping. I love help. Like I love hearing people's problems so I can help them through this. I love helping people move furniture. I love doing extra stuff at work because it keeps me busy and helps the company grow. Versus, like knowing when you're being taken advantage of, because then you're just kind of like, well, I don't really want to right now, because I'm not in that mental headspace right now, or like I'm going through a lot right now. So I don't have the emotional capacity to be there for you, or, whatever it may be. But you got to learn when to help. You have to learn how to help and how to be caring and kind without being taken advantage of. Because if you're being taken advantage of, that's when you know that you have to limit how much you help. Because then that person's becoming way too dependent on you and that they only see you for being dependable and nothing else. So you have to learn when to start cutting people off and be like, all right, I get it. I help you a lot. I know, but like, I just can't do this. I need to, we need some boundaries. We need some space that you can't just come to me all the time. Like, I get it. If you're coming to me a lot, maybe it's because I give good advice and I genuinely, do my best to understand where you're coming from, and that makes you feel validated. But I'm not really getting that in return. So I feel like we need to put a stipulation or a boundary on how often you come to me for your problems. Because if I can come to you, if I go to you to my, for my problems, or come to you with a problem and you don't show me that same level of, understanding and respect and trying to help me that I show you, then it's not really fair for me to keep constantly helping you if you're not, going to help me back. And, just to kind of close off this topic of this whole thing is, in a relationship, regardless of what kind it is, it's always give and take. But it should never come to the point where you actually have to bring up that all that person is doing is taking and all you're doing is giving. It should never have to come to that. If it ever comes to the point where you have to point out that someone is just taking and all you're doing is giving, there's a problem. Because giving and taking is such a natural part of a relationship of any kind that you don't think about it. You just know that, hey, I have a problem. I'm going to go talk to this person because they're available right now. And then if they ever have a problem, then they can come to you. If they need help moving something, or, in their house, you can go and help. And if you ever need something, help moving something in your house, that they'll come in and help you. And in a romantic relationship, that if there's something in the relationship that is bothering you, you'd be open and communicative about it and be like, hey, I just don't feel like I'm being heard enough, or I don't feel like, maybe you're spending enough time with me, or, that kind of stuff. And you work on that relationship and realize, wow, I've just kind of been going through a lot with my own mental health struggles and I haven't really been thinking about you that much. And so I didn't even realize that I was putting you in that position. I'm really sorry. Maybe I need to lean on you more so that I can include you in my life more, so we can, because you're my biggest cheerleader and I need you, so maybe I need to be more open with you instead of just trying to fight this battle on my own. Because even if I have to fight it on my own, I still think maybe you should know about the battles that I'm struggling with and fighting in my head. But if you ever have to bring that up, like where someone is just, it's one-sided, like all you're doing is giving and all they're doing is taking, it may just honestly be best to cut that person off. And it's very hard, but you have to do it for your own mental sanity. And in terms of like spiritualism and the metaphysical side of things, it also protects your energy and your vibrations, because what that person is doing is basically they're just an energy vampire. They're taking all the good energy from you and they're leaving you drained, and that can also kind of affect your mood and everything. And as somebody that's, a Reiki, master practitioner, soon to be Reiki master teacher next week, like my energy is, precious and it's sacred, and I need that, right? Especially, when I'm, performing Reiki. So I always need to keep my energy protected at all times. So it's always just beneficial for me to also make sure that I put up my boundaries and, know when to stop talking to people for a while and kind of recoup for myself, for my own mental sanity and my own best interest in mind. Because at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, only you can take care of yourself, and you are responsible for how you manage your energy and your time and your mental health and your emotions and your physical well-being, not anyone else's. So with that, I'm going to end this week's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. Remember to hit the like button and subscribe if you enjoyed this week's episode. I've already put out 11 other episodes, so you can always go back and check those out. And I always think it's kind of funny when I watch back to my first video and I'm kind of like, I sound so but the more I'm doing this, the more I've kind of started opening up and kind of realizing that a lot of people are going to be listening to this hopefully someday soon. So I'm kind of just getting used to it, like as if I'm talking to other people that I know personally, and it helps a lot. And don't forget to also hit the bell, because the bell will also give you a notification when I post new episodes on YouTube. And otherwise, I hope you guys all have a really good rest of your week, or I guess weekend or week, or whenever your week ends or weekends, because like I work the weekend shift in my work. So like my weekend is the weekdays. But I hope life is going good for you guys, and I will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.